Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to do some more advanced modeling exercises. I don't want you to confuse this with difficult or something you can't do. This is very accessible for all levels and is actually very beneficial even if you're new to hard surface, so definitely watch the video. I say it's more advanced because we're going to be using some advanced techniques, but these techniques are actually quite simple when you get used to them. So before we start the video, I just want to encourage you guys to go pick up some of our free products over on our site. We have a ton of stuff. We have free courses, we have free guides, references, things like that. It'll also add you to our email list. We'll send you a bunch of cool stuff throughout the week and also occasional product announcements for when we release new courses and stuff like that. So take a look at our free products in the description. I think you'll really enjoy them and it should provide you some additional value to your modeling journey. Alright, so what I want to do here is just make like a mechanical looking piece. And this is actually going to be quite a fun exercise. So let's go ahead and scale this cube. Maybe like right here. A little bit on the Y. And then let's go ahead and apply the scale so that way it's nice and uniform. Cool. And then what I want to do, I'm going to be using, I guess we could use box cutter for this, but I'm just going to go ahead and add in a cylinder here. Let's make the vertex count 64. So it's nice and smooth, and then I'm just going to go ahead and sharpen it using hard ops like that. If you're not using hard ops, just shade it smooth and then turn on your auto smooth. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this RY90 over the y-axis. Just going to scale it down and hold control. And maybe like, I kind of want to get this like right in the middle, roughly. Can move out this way. Okay, awesome. That looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and also chamfer these two edges right here, like that. And let's also take the cylinder and just kind of move it all the way through, maybe like right here. That should be good enough. And then I just want to have like a nice little rounded area. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all these edges here. Control B. We'll give it like 6 segments so it's nice and smooth, and then just go ahead and sharpen it. Cool. So what I want to do now is I want to union the cylinder onto this piece up here. So really easy, I'm just going to select this and then shift click on this, and you can either use hard ops or the bool tool add-on. I'm just going to use hard ops and run a union boolean here. Cool. So it looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and hide this cutter just to kind of see how it looks. Alright, so now what I want to do is I want to actually apply that boolean. So that way it's actually, fused together. And then I just want to kind of recalculate the auto smooth angle. Maybe I'll put this to like 30 and it should kind of display a bit better. Awesome. So now we have this interesting looking shape right here and we can kind of play with it some more. I'm going to move this face out just a little bit more like that. And then I want to press Control R and drop a loop cut through the middle here, but we can't because this N-gon doesn't allow us to. So what I'm going to do instead is just Control R here, right click, Control R here, and then what we can do is right click, but we can use vertex snap to grab it on the x-axis and hold Control and snap it right there. And then all we have to do is just kind of connect these with the J key. Same for right here. Cool. And you can also press Shift R to repeat the last command as well. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and Alt click on this edge and then just bevel it. I want to have like a nice little piece right here. And then if I tab into face mode, what I want to do is I want to press E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then Alt S to scale along the normals here. Then we'll kind of get this effect, which is pretty cool. Interesting. And then I'm just going to Alt Shift click on these two edges here and then just give it a nice little, rounded segment here. That looks pretty good. Maybe what we could also do is Alt click here and kind of round that out. We could use a few less segments, I think. Kind of like that. And then what I want to do is take this face right here, move it out just a little bit more. Notice how these nice beveled transitions kind of define the form a little bit nicer. I really love using these types of bevels because they fuse together very nicely. So let me just hop into the side view here, and I'm just going to use box cutter to run a cut right through the center here. I'm going to actually press the D key and set the polygon count to 64. You could also just add in your own cylinder and do it manually if you're not using hard ops or box cutter. Okay, so I'm going to go to the snap tool here and then control click and then just kind of pan this one out. Maybe to about here. And I just want to cut all the way through. I think maybe all the way through. Yeah, let's do that all the way through. Cool. And then what I want to do is actually recall that cutter. So let me press Q and then ever scroll over, because what I want to do now is I want to tab into edit mode and actually kind of drop in a loop cut here and bring some of that geometry back. So remember, these cutters are booleans. So what happens is it removes pieces that are, affected by the cutter. But if we, for example, alt click on this set and extrude it and then alt S, that cutter is no longer influencing that area. So it's basically bringing back that geometry that we originally removed. Makes sense? So let me go ahead and make a nice rounded bevel right here as well. Maybe a chamfer instead. I want it to look like a engineering type of piece, like a mechanical piece, right? I think it would look cool. Okay, that looks pretty nice. Next, what I want to do is I want to run yet another cut through here. So to do this, I'm just going to add in a cylinder here manually. And actually, I want to move the 3D cursor to the center of this piece. So what I could do is I could simply tab into edit mode, select this face, and then Shift S, cursor to selected. So now when I add in a cylinder, it's going to add right in the center there. So I can go ahead and sharpen it, rotate it, and I want to kind of, let's see, let's move it to about here. I want to run a slice. So I'm going to press Q, booleans, and then slash, or you can just press Control / on the numpad. So now I kind of have this effect right here. Maybe scale it up just a bit more. Now we can't really see a nice separation here, so what I'm going to do is select everything and then just drop a bevel, just a very, very small bevel to kind of have a nice separation there. Cool. So this looks nice. Now what I want to do is I want to make some little notches kind of going around here. So there's a few different ways we could do this. I'm going to show you an interesting way to approach it. So check this out. With hard ops, what I can do is I can ever scroll. And then if I press Q and go to settings and shift click on shade solid, it will take that cutter, duplicate it, move it out of the cutters collection and make it a solid, which is good. So I can go ahead and take this, and I also want to take the piece inside of it, this little slice piece. It's kind of hard to select, so we'll do it in wireframe first. And actually I want to duplicate this piece. So what I'm going to do to duplicate this, I could press Shift D and then apply the booleans, but there's an easier way. In hard ops, I'm going to go to operations and then shift click on smart apply, and that's going to basically duplicate it, apply all the modifiers, and remove the bevels. So now we kind of have a duplicate piece right here. So now I can just isolate these two pieces, and I'm going to use an intersection boolean to make the effect I want. So the first thing I want to do is kind of hop here into the side view, one of these, and I just want to take maybe that many faces, invert the selection with Control I, and then delete the faces. Cool. Now what I want to do is I want to press Alt S to kind of scale it out just a bit off that face so it's not intersecting. And then what I want to do is add a solidify modifier. So I'm going to go to Q, add modifier, and then solidify. And I'm going to solidify it to right about there, I think. Cool, so now check this out. I'm going to apply the solidify modifier, and what I want to do is shift click on these two pieces and run an intersection boolean. And what this is going to do is it's just going to give me a piece that, so Blender decided to crash on me, but I have power save, so no big deal. Power save is free, by the way. Pick it up. It's going to save your ass whenever Blender crashes. Okay, so the reason that wasn't working is because we have a, basically these are occupying the same spot in 3D space. So these faces, let me apply the solidify again. These faces here are occupying the same spot as these ones here. So you could do one of two things. You can move it a little bit, or you could simply, when you run your intersection boolean, you could change the boolean type to exact, and then it's going to calculate better. But I think it's just way easier just to move this a little bit. So that way when you run the intersection boolean, you won't have those issues. So now what's going to happen is it's going to take the shared space. So whatever is basically inside of this piece with this piece, so the shared space between the two, that's going to be what's left when we run that intersection boolean. So what I might do is move this back just a little bit more. Doesn't make much of a difference. Now we're going to kind of have this shape right here. And that's going to give us a really nice kind of curved piece in the back, like almost a support. It looks pretty cool. All right, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and just control click on sharpen. We can apply that boolean. And now if I go back into global view, we're going to have this type of effect. So I can kind of move it forward just a bit like that. And then if I just want to make these, actually instead what I'll do is I'll just kind of move that a bit on the Y. That's fine. Okay, awesome. That looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is I want to run a radial array. So in HardOps, I'm just going to go to Mesh Tools and then control click on Radial Array. And you have to make sure your 3D cursor is in that center spot, because what control clicking on Radial Array does is it arrays around the 3D cursor. So once again, just move your 3D cursor here if you haven't yet. And I'll turn screencast keys back on, so Shift S, cursor to selected. And then I just want to take this piece right here, control click on Radial Array and press X to swap the axis. And we're just going to increase it to right about there. Cool. All right, so now we kind of have like an interesting looking effect here. Now I want these little pieces to kind of meet together, but if I increase this higher, it's just gonna not give me the result I want. So what I'm gonna do instead is tab into edit mode. I can tick on these buttons right here to preview it in edit mode. And all I really want to do, let me dissolve out this edge right here. We don't need that. Same with this one. What I want to do is box select these vertices here and just kind of slide them. So you can double tap G to slide them up and then press C to continue down. And then same for right here, double tap G to slide up and then C to continue down. And now everything should meet very nicely where I want them to be. So it looks good. And then we can just drop a very small holding bevel to kind of have a nice separation there. Looks good. I think it might also be a good idea to maybe run a chamfer right here. That might make it look a bit more interesting. That's pretty cool. And what I don't like about this piece up here, aside from like a mechanical standpoint, I'm just doing this as like just a modeling exercise really. I think it would look cooler if we took these edges here and maybe rounded them out. So I'm just going to do like 10 segments or something. The bigger the bevel is going to be, the more segments you might want to add to make it look, more rounded. So maybe like right here. That looks pretty cool. We could even take this whole set and maybe move it up. Maybe, I don't know. We can leave it for now. That's an easy one to change if we want to do that. Okay, so far so good. This is looking pretty interesting. I want to go to the back here though, and let me apply this boolean, the one going straight through. So we can apply that, and then maybe back here, we'll just Alt-Shift click, and then we could either round it out like that, or we could run a chamfer, and then bevel the chamfer, just to make it look a bit more smooth, kind of like that. That's pretty interesting. And then maybe on the outside we could make a bigger bevel like that. That looks kind of cool. So far so good. We have an interesting looking piece here. I definitely like it. I'm trying to think about what we could add next. Maybe what we could do is run a slice. So I could go into box cutter and then simply run a slice. Just press X, and then we'll kind of have like a little effect like that. That looks pretty good. Now it would be cool to run a chamfer here, but I'm not sure how well this is going to work when you're doing poly-based modeling. This type of situation right here, like if I try to chamfer this is going to be much more suitable for a CAD-based software, because you're not going to run into these issues where the edges hit and things like that. This is why a lot of these types of designs are best made in CAD software, simply because of, just the differences in modeling capabilities, right? This works on polygons, and CAD softwares work on mathematical equations instead. So, but you can still get away with it in here. You just have to know what to do. the pros for polys outweigh the cons for me almost all the time, at least for what I do. So maybe what I can do is if I hit this barrier point, I could always dissolve out this edge and then dissolve out this edge right here and just control click back around. We should have a lot more buffer now, kind of like that. The only issue is we're definitely going to have some shading artifacts which you wouldn't otherwise encounter if you're using CAD, for example, but that's okay. I'll show you decent ways to fix that. So what I want to do now is maybe, let's see how it would look if I beveled that. That's not too bad. It's kind of interesting. Now right here, the reason we have these nasty shading breaks is simply because we have this n-gon going over a curved surface. This is where, you know, like I said, I've said before, CAD software would really shine here. So, you know, there's limitations to poly-based modeling. There's also limitations to CAD modeling. I much prefer poly modeling for what I do, but obviously there's pros and cons to both. So I'm going to show you how you can kind of fix this. It's not going to be perfect. You could try using a normal transfer and things like that, but it's simply not going to be perfect ever. So there's quite a few ways you could do this. The first way is to maybe isolate the shading. So what I'm going to do is drop in a loop cut here and then just snap it here. So we're going to join that there, and then maybe here I could kind of join that up and help flex the shading a bit more. So it's a bit more reasonable. So those shading breaks are pretty much isolated to that specific area right there. So yeah, I mean, it's never going to be perfect. Let me make this bevel a bit bigger as well. It looks okay. It's never going to be perfect, but you're going to be able to get, you know, something that's not super noticeable. What we could also do is drop in another loop cut right here and then another one right here. And the further you kind of push these loop cuts in, the more that nasty shading break is going to kind of be pushed in. So if I join, let me select this loop and snap it here. So now if I join these vertices together, you're going to see now that's kind of become isolated just up to that bevel. And the bevel portions are where you're going to have the most machine looking effect anyways. So that's ideally where you want to kind of push that those shading issues into. Now it's going to look a lot better. Now you want to be careful. What I could try to do is move this up to push it even more, but now we're actually disturbing the curvature of that cylinder, which is an awful idea. I would not recommend that. So the good part here is we've only isolated, or the shading's now been isolated to this portion only. So this whole area here is good because we have a nice set of quads, right? But the shading breaks do begin once you get into this territory here. So there are limitations, like I said, to this type of workflow in terms of shading, but you can always isolate it like this. You could also use normal transfers, but normal transfers are pretty much, you're stuck in Blender that way. So if you're just trying to render, it might be a good idea. Another thing you could do is you could try to kind of, you know, connect up these vertices and just kind of see like how it flexes the shading. Sometimes, like right there, it actually helps it. And now the shading is pretty much looking close to perfect. See that? The only break I see is about right here, in which case we could, I don't know, let's just slide this down a bit so it's more even. You know, you could do something like this and just kind of play with it. But I think this is reasonable. So now what I want to do is I want to take this piece and I just want to symmetrize it over so I don't have to do the same thing on this side. So I'm just going to press Alt-X with hard ops and then symmetry. And then we're just going to symmetrize it, and now that all that geometry is going to be pushed over. So now as you can see, I mean, this is the only area where we have some minor issues, but when you're in Studio View, you can't even see it, so it looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm liking this. Pretty decent effects here. Maybe we could also go to... what do I want to do next? Okay, I do see a small shading break right here. Not sure if you're going to see it with YouTube's compression right here. So same idea, what we can do is drop in a loop and push that in. Drop in another loop here. Snap it, and then just kind of join this together to really isolate that shading up to that bevel point. So it's going to look really, really clean and naturally flowing. There we go. Matte caps are really good for identifying potential shading issues. I'd really recommend using the shiny ones in here. These ones are pretty good as well. Those will pretty much immediately tell you where you have breaks, like right here we have a small break, but Overall, this looks pretty good. I'm not liking how tall this piece is. What I'm going to do, is, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to Alt-Shift click up through here to select this entire portion, and then just kind of slide that down, and then we can just symmetrize it to save time. I think that looks a bit more reasonable. Cool, so far so good. Let me try, this is just an idea, let me try running an inset boolean down here. I think it might look kind of cool. So I'm going to cut through and then press the I key and then the T key to run an inset boolean here with box cutter. I would not even attempt to run an inset boolean in vanilla Blender. I've made a video on it, and you're just going to want to throw your head in the table. It's just an awful way to do it in vanilla Blender. It's like, it's complicated. So I just wanted to see how that would look. We could even ever scroll to the original cutter here, just kind of bevel that and see how that looks. It's kind of interesting. The shading is going to be a bit nasty here, so what we're going to have to do is actually isolate it up to this point and then up to this point where the curves basically start. And then you could always come in here, drop in a few loop cuts, kind of slide this outside of the bevel territory, and it's going to be a lot more reasonable in terms of shading. Now right here we have quite a few shading breaks. Let me see, maybe if I drop the bevel. I'm curious as to where exactly that's occurring. So what I'm going to do is dissolve out. No, that's not what I want to do. So what we could do in this case is we could slide these vertices, because right now they're disrupting that bevel right there. They're overlapping. So we're going to have to kind of slide these outside of the bevel territory if we want to get the result that we want. Let's see. This one, what we might need to do is actually just apply this inset boolean and then deal with the rest here. What I can honestly do is just dissolve that out and then dissolve this out, and it's going to be perfect. So let me just go ahead and symmetrize this. We have a few more shading artifacts right here, but I'm just going to go ahead and dissolve out that edge so they're not overlapping. What's happening really is this bevel modifier, as the bevel begins to push out, it starts to overlap like that. So this edge is just simply too close. When we dissolve that out, we're good to go. Cool. Now we do have another shading break kind of up here. I'm trying to think what we should do. First of all, let's kind of work these vertices right here. Let's just do some simple merging, kind of get this cleaned up a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, if you can get something decent, it's always a good idea. So we could just kind of join all that together. Looks pretty good. We could also try dissolving that edge out. It's not very crucial to the curvature, but it actually makes the shading look worse when we do that. So maybe we'll just leave it alone. We could also come in here and try to add in a few loops. So, you know, drop in a loop here and then join this up to kind of like isolate the shading a bit more. There's a few different things you could do, but I'm not going to bother with that. I don't think it's really super essential in this case. Right now I just want to make sure we have decent shading all around. This is bothering me a lot though, this shading stretch right here. I'm sure you can see it. So maybe what I'm going to do in this case is I will do this as a matter of fact. So I could just drop in a few loops to start kind of joining these together to isolate the shading a bit. And once we do that, it's just going to really help clean everything up. I don't even see any issues at all. Right here, maybe I'll merge that down a little bit. Looks good. So I'm just trying to kind of see. You know, this is where the main shading errors are going to occur on this curved area where we have these n-gons and triangles. So you could always come around here with the knife tool and just isolate that even further. So just kind of have like a nice continuous, you know, set of edges going around to about there or so. And that would kind of help hold it. And then if we go into matcap, you're going to see it's almost perfect minus these very, very few areas where it kind of gets disturbed. But obviously that's because we have, you know, some triangles and n-gons in those areas. So it's really a matter of how much do you want to work this topology right here? How much do you really want to, you know, stress about this type of thing? To me, it's not worth my time that much. We can join that up here. And then maybe we could continue another loop down through here. And just kind of join these up. I'm just trying to make some quads here and there whenever I'm able to. Let's see, maybe join that there and join that there. Dissolve that one out. And honestly, this right here is quite reasonable. This is going to give us a pretty decent result. What I might do is join that and then dissolve this one out, just to kind of make this area look a bit cleaner. But now if we hop back into MatCap, you're going to see there's not really any breaks except for like right here, in which case it's just, there's not too much I can do to really make that perfect. I could slide it in a bit more, of course, but you know, I don't really see any breaks right there. It looks fine. Cool. The main one you should really be looking at is this reflective one, because this one, the shading looks perfect. I don't see any issues. So let me just go ahead and symmetrize over to the other side so we don't have to do it again. And this piece is looking pretty interesting. Maybe what I could do now is I could make some little notches here on the top. So I'm just going to go ahead and I could kind of cut that. And then ever scroll and simply run a radial array. So I'm going to go ahead and control click on radial array. Just going to make this 4 pieces so we kind of have one on each side. That looks pretty cool. Definitely like that. And then we can just go ahead and drop in a loop right here to kind of isolate that shading a bit more. And now it looks absolutely amazing. Nice. Now as one final effect, what I think I want to do is add in a cylinder. Let's rotate this cylinder and then maybe put it, I don't know, like right here. We can always, let's move this back, scale it up. Let's go ahead and chamfer this maybe and sharpen it. Then we kind of have this effect. That looks kind of cool actually. Then just run a really small bevel on that. And then for here, we could maybe inset this back face and then just kind of extrude it over to the end. Just kind of do something like that. I'm just trying to make a cool shape here. Not sure what I like really. Just kind of experimenting, getting some good, you know, modeling exercises done in here. And that could be pretty cool. Maybe I need to widen those out. And there we go. So we have a pretty simple piece using some more advanced modeling techniques. So kind of showing you how to deal with booleans, to deal with shading issues, things like that. These are the areas people get confused in. And I just kind of wanted to show you my approach to it and how I would handle it. So for people coming in here and asking about, you know, the topology considerations and whatnot, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what you're trying to model for. I don't know what your goals are. If you use CAD-based software, what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of booleans and bevels being ran, and when you export it as a polygon, there's going to be n-gons all over the place. In those cases, it's totally fine. But, you know, if I was trying to, for example, let me apply this. If I was trying to deform this, maybe I go in here and add in like a some sort of bend modifier, so I could like, let's see, do like a simple deform. It's just not going to work. Because it's just, you know, there's not enough geometry here to support it, and it has a lot of n-gons, so if you try to deform it, it won't work well. So if this is more of like a static piece, you're trying to use it as, I don't know, a cool render or an engineering piece or something, this is the workflow you should be using. But if you're trying to make this of like for a VFX piece or maybe like deforming it and things like that, this approach is not going to work very well. Now there's an add-on I use. I don't have it installed right now, but if that was ever an issue, I would just use a quad remesher because this is the workflow I'd use anyways. Quad remesher is fantastic. But, you know, if we go into edit mode here, you can kind of get the idea of how everything's working. The corners where the shading breaks, we have support, right, to push the shading in. Same for areas like this. We have support to hold the shading inside the bevel, kind of like that. You could even go in here and maybe like use the loop tools to relax it a bit. That could make it even better. Do the same thing right here. We could just kind of relax it like that. But you're going to see overall the topology isn't really like anything crazy. All I'm trying to do is hold the shading together. So yeah, this is just more of a little exercise video kind of showing you my approach to things, how I would deal with booleans, how I would deal with shading and things like that. Just using a simple looking mechanical piece. Just thought it would look cool. So that's about it for this video. I hope it gave you some ideas, gave you some insight into how to deal with more complex situations. And if you have any questions, let me know. And that's about it for this video. Like I said, we have a ton of free guides available on our website. So if you want to take a look at some of those and maybe watch some more videos on topology, we actually have a topology handbook over there as well, which you might be interested in. So take a look at that. There's a link in the top of the description. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.